Okay, welcome back. On this panel we have Lima Bhuiyan presenting her paper on genocidal deceptions in science fiction, life imitating art, or art imitating life.
Science fiction television is often viewed as a form of art which directly reflects American society. It can be used to point out our flaws and missteps as a civilization, as well as to highlight our humanity and accomplishments. In the past and modern times, creators of American science fiction television have been able to use their medium to portray definitive views of political policies, U.S. foreign relations, social issues such as gender, race, and so on. But one of the few areas science fiction cannot seem to give us an explicit answer is in the area of genocide. By examining classic science fiction television shows such as the Star Trek series and modern movies such as The Plan, a spin-off of television's re-envisioned Battlestar Galactica as case studies, it becomes apparent that even in an idealistic or utopian world, or even among beings more perfect than humanity, there still exists confusion regarding the morality, execution, or very idea of genocide. Similar to humanity's confusion as to what constitutes genocide, it appears that the medium through which we view a better and more technologically progressive world than ours cannot give us the answers either. However, there exists one constant within science fiction genocide that humanity also exhibits and could stand to learn from. Genocide is rarely against a person, but rather an ideology. By using theories of othering and exploring the lack of definition and/or the compartmentalization of the term genocide, this paper will use science fiction television to further explore the idea that although genocide exists, whenever one group of people attempts to stamp out an ideology, religion, or culture incompatible with their own, the disparity lies between acknowledging the difference between collective groups of people and the individual. In the process of attacking a collective ideology, it is easy to forget or disregard that that which is considered to be incompatible is still attached to an individual. When a collective ideology is attacked, one is not attacking an ideology, but rather destroying a people. In other words, the factors which lead up to a genocide allowed one group of people to be seen as a collective, similar to the Borg species in Star Trek series. The fact that all humanity is made up of various individuals and there is no human collective is often forgotten. We fear the other, in part because we fear assimilation, and would rather remove that which threatens the collective of us. I do this a lot. It is true that if we fear assimilation into the other, then it must also be true that we fear that which is not us. The only way to understand us and them would be to titles one's personal identity and then I the dissimilar with suspicion. For example, during the 1990s, following the fall of communism, American national identity was well established. We knew who we were by understanding what we were not. At the end of the Cold War, democracy emerged as a victorious ideology and left America as world hegemony with no one to oppose her. On the other hand, with the binary disturbed, America faced a new identity crisis. Post-colonial theorist Edward Said saw a continuing trend of othering. Said believed that East-West relations could be understood in terms of polar opposites called binary divisions, or thing A being the other, and thing B. Examples include light and dark, male and female, active-passive. One polar opposite is considered to be superior to the other, and according to Said's theory of Orientalism, binary oppositions are asymmetrically related. He also believed that the West comes to know itself by proclaiming everything that it is not. In the years leading up to the 1990s, for example, the binary of political ideology is communism and democracy. Americans are able to secure their identity by understanding who we were not and investing completely in the concept of the enemy. One was an American because one was not a communist. However, with the end of communism in the early 1990s, for the first time in history, global politics became multipolar and multicultural. During most of human existence, contact between civilizations had been limited, if not non-existent. However, in the years since America's victory in an ideological war, even we are guilty of spilling copious amounts of blood in several wars and skirmishes around the world, Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, in attempts to press our ideology of democracy onto the other. The process of othering and creating an us and them ideology has quickly spun into dehumanizing other cultures, peoples, and viewing those different than us as something less than human. For example, it is rare to hear of any of the prior mentioned conflicts, i.e. Iraq, Afghanistan, and Bosnia, referred to as genocide. In fact, because the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, the current standard for prosecuting perpetrators of genocide, is so vague, many crimes of slaughter go unpunished simply because they cannot be defined. Or in Lecter states, after affirming that genocide is a crime under international law, whether committed in time of peace or war, the 1948 Convention defines genocide as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, such as killing the members of the group, causing serious bodily or mentally harm to the members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of the life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in part or in whole, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring the children of the group, and so on. Despite this lengthy list, left out of the definition of genocide is the issue of intent within political groups. The drafters of the convention felt as though pinpointing the deliberate destruction of political groups under the title of genocide would leave too many governments vulnerable and was thus not addressed. Also left out was the idea of cultural genocide, where groups are forcibly assimilated into the predominant culture. Due to the porous and I would say arguably convenient at the time definition of genocide, slaughters such as the FNL campaign of 1988, which resulted in the deaths of thousands of Iraqi Kurds, their Serbian ethnic cleansing of Muslims and Croats, and the murder of 1.7 million Cambodians at the hands of the Khmer Rouge government all went unpunished. In fact, there is hardly much of a public outcry during any of these atrocities. The lack of awareness from the general public stems from what I believe is a problem of semiotics, as employed by governments. Semiology studies signs, the form of communication in everyday life, and the laws applicable in linguistics, and assigned to a clearly defined place in the field of human knowledge. By dehumanizing, othering, and citing a group as less than human, it becomes acceptable to hunt, kill, and destroy them. This exists specifically in the language used to identify the other and their ideology. Warren Lecter states that even the Clinton administration instructed its people to stay mum on the killings of thousands of Tutsis, lest the American public cry out for action. Even as recently as the Iraqi war, distancing language was used not only by the grunt soldiers, but high-ranking officials. Veteran Mike Preisner says about the following about his experience. When I got to Iraq in 2003, I learned a new word, Haji. Haji was the enemy. Haji was every Iraqi. He was not a person, or a father, or a teacher, or a worker. I began to hear new words like towelhead, camel jockey, and sand nigger. These words did not initially come from my fellow soldiers, but from my superiors, my platoon sergeant, my company first sergeant, my battalion commander, all the way up the chain of command. Viciously racist terms were suddenly acceptable. We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me. By using distancing language and issuing vague government-backed statements that genocide may or may not be occurring, very few world citizens are going to put aside their everyday worries and demand action for another group of people, for them. A pacified population will not consider that when the state ignores them today, they could very well ignore us tomorrow. If we were to accept science fiction television as a reflection of our society, the only thing which comes across clearly is that we are confused. Genocide as depicted in Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica's movie The Plan is not clear-cut, and even among the us, who is in support of destroying the them, there is always division. However, these shows reflect back to us how we as individuals can let these atrocities take place, and the one constant parallel between science fiction television and our world realities is that genocide attempts to attack the ideology of the other and disassociates it from the individual. One prime example of this is the relationship between the alien race of the Borg and the Federation in Star Trek The Next Generation. The Borg is a race of biotechnology-based aliens who use cybernetic enhancement as a means of achieving what they believe to be perfection, often used as an invasion threat to the Federation, who are always attempting to keep the peace. Individual Borgs have no names or individual characteristics, and seek an unemotional need for perfection. Or referred to by number designations, the humanoid aliens have a hive-like mind and monotonously state to any non-Borg that they will be assimilated and that resistance is futile. The Borgs search the universe, seeking populations to absorb through methods of technology, and all share a singular brain. To a Borg, there is no them, because the other is imperfect and thus needs to be assimilated. After several near-death encounters with the Borg race by the Federation's Enterprise ship, Captain Picard thoroughly no longer thinks of the Borg as a human race, or as a race. Thinks of the Borg race as human. Rather, he views them as a group of machines. Anyone assimilated is a lost cause. In the episode I, Borg, Captain Picard uses his logic to devise a destructive plan. When the crew finds a Borg survivor at a crash site to finally do away with the Borg problem, the captain asks his engineering crew to devise a virus to implement into a young Borg and send him back to his people. When the surviving Borg's memories are downloaded into the collective, they would also download the virus implemented by Enterprise, which would destroy the hive. Captain Picard even states that sending a weapon of mass destruction back to a people is unthinkable. In other cases, but the Borg is an extreme case. When one crew member disagrees with the idea of genocide, her worries are completely dismissed. All Picard's plans, however, come to a halt when he realizes that the Borg, which the engineer names Hugh instead of his number designation, is showing signs of individuality. Resisting his crew at first, Picard finally speaks to Hugh as another Borg and demands that the drone assimilate the crew, that their resistance is in fact futile. Picard is shocked when Hugh responds in the first person, leading Picard to finally believe that he was in fact an individual and is simply at odds with the collective culture of his people. Picard deems it immoral to use an individual to destroy his people and offers Hugh asylum, which Hugh refuses to save the Enterprise crew. Picard starts the show based on his past experiences with the Borg race and inadvertently uses his prejudice to merely commit genocide. Unknown to him, Picard even uses semiotics to justify his actions by starting a slippery slope of special exceptions by calling the Borg an extreme case. By using one drone to cause the genocide of a whole race, it was only a matter of time until someone else used the same justification to commit genocide on another race, leading to a slippery slope that could quickly unravel the utopian world within the Star Trek universe. However, by getting to know the individual Borg, Picard is able to see through the moralities of his actions. A similar case of individual versus the collective takes place in Star Trek Voyager, in the episode titled Remember. Voyager is shown transporting a telepathic race, the Narans, to their home world when a crew member begins experiencing intense dreams in which she is an Naran woman having a forbidden love affair with an Naran man, belonging to a group of people called the Regressives, who spread technology. The dreams feel like memories and become increasingly dangerous, forcing the crew member to seek answers from the Naran passengers. She learns that her dreams are actual memories being projected to her by one of the visiting Narans, now an old woman. The female crew member visits the woman's quarters and finds her dying from what she claims is a murder to continue the conspiracy the Voyager crew member is now aware of. The Regressives are deported and executed in a program of mass genocide. The Narans, however, seek to cover up the genocide by teaching succeeding generations that the Regressives brought about their own demise. Before dying, the old woman confesses how she's turned her lover over to the authorities and watched his execution. The Prime Directive forbids Captain Janeway from interfering, but it is clear she does not fully believe the Naran's claim to innocence. Finally, the crew member rushes to an Naran woman she befriended earlier and bemoans the fact that she is unable to project the memories and thus prove their validity. The Naran states that she is able to connect their minds. The episode ends with the Naran woman experiencing three dreams for herself. While in a state of dreaming, the father of the woman having the affair is aware of his daughter's love for a regressive man, but moans to her over and over that they are so different and unclean by spurring technology. She was even told by her father that the regressives had volunteered to relocate to a different colony, but would not be surprised when plagues wiped them out. In her father's mind, the regressives are no longer a people, but rather a form of thought that he can no longer tolerate. Her lover even dies for being a so-called destructive influence by rejecting technology. Even while the woman's Anaran lover tells her that his people are being literally vaporized, she asks how such a crime could be committed and no one know. While in love, the Anaran woman was part of them, but eventually she had to choose between the us of those who use technology and the them of her lover. In the Anaran's attempt at eradicating the ideology of the regressives, they were quick to forget that ideology belonged to individuals and not just a group of people. Even for the Anaran woman, she succumbed to mob mentality as her lover was burned by lasers in front of her while a crowd and she shouted yes. She is seen explaining to younger generations using very distancing language that the regressives didn't want to live with the Anarans and didn't want the technology that was shared with them. They had strange ideas on how to live, and in the end it destroyed them. As can be seen from the examples within Star Trek, the genocide and near-genocide groups of people have almost nothing to do with the individual themselves. Rather, the individual is looked upon as representing an ideology, and those in power are representing an ideology that those in power have to do away with. Without love and respect for each other, there can be no civility. With no civility, peoples will always dehumanize each other, since that is the only way we can understand ourselves. This idea came to a head in the science fiction movie The Plan, which was a spin-off from the popular television show Battlestar Galactica. In The Plan, the genocide of humanity is depicted from the Cylon point of view. The Cylons were a machine created by humanity to serve, but eventually the Cylons revolted. After a decades-long war, the Cylons mysteriously left and were never heard from again, until they returned in their human form. After an extensive genocide campaign on humanity, only a few thousand people survived. It is impossible to tell who is a Cylon within the list of humanity plotting against, and who is human. The Plan attempts to answer some of the questions of human genocide. Within the last few episodes of Battlestar Galactica, it becomes clear there is division among the Cylons. Several models want to join humanity and seek a new world together in which they can live. A human Cylon baby exists, and thus for a few models, the new mixed baby represents the future that they wish to preserve. However, other models, specifically the model of John Cavil, number 1, continue to seek the end of humanity. While all the other models rely heavily on religion in much of the show, Cavil is one of the few whose motives are not driven by religion. Audiences learn in The Plan that Cavil is displeased with the final 5, the original Cylons who created the other humanoid versions. Models of Cylon because of their inherent respect and tolerance towards humanity. To teach the final 5 models a lesson, he wipes their memories and places them within human society to learn how brutish and savage humanity actually is, that the Cylons are a more perfect being. To bring out the worst in humanity, as well as to return the final 5 home, the Cavil models lead the other Cylon models in genocide against all humanity through nuclear weapons. Thinking of the final 5 have yet to learn their lesson, Cavil protects the final 5 as the planets are bombarded with bombs and reunites them with the remnants of humanity. Cavil's plan does not work, however, because by living amongst humanity, the final 5 have seen the good and hope humanity has to offer. Rather than seeing the us versus them, the final 5 find themselves in a position where they are both human and Cylon. Since their memories were erased, they know only of their lives as human and become very emotionally distraught when suddenly they are told that they are the enemies of humanity, because to them, they are humanity. While the rest of humanity's government has found itself in an us versus them battle, essentially since the genocide, the final 5 cannot see it that way, and in fact, few humans can view the final 5 that way. One final 5 member is the deeply flawed character of Saul Tide, an alcoholic co-commander who poisons his wife, another final 5 model, strictly because she has divulged intelligence to the Cylons regarding humanity's resistance movements to save Ty's life. Another was in the character of Chief, the ship's engineer. It becomes most difficult to imagine him as the enemy. The genocide of humanity in The Plan is orchestrated through the us versus them, humanity versus Cylon idea of one flawed Cylon model. The Cavil model eventually faces destruction when humanity and Cylon kind work together to destroy the Cylons who refuse to accept humanity as their equals and both parties as equally flawed. Overall, genocide as depicted in our science fiction strongly portrays our confusion about the topic in regards to morality, legalities, and so on. However, there is no doubt that when genocide is committed, it is ideology of the other which is under fire. Though the ideologies differ from the attackers, no humanity is a board-like collective. We are made of differing individuals. Till humanity can begin to view those that they attack, the victims of genocide, as individuals with rights, lives, and thoughts, apart from the group, we are no closer to defining or understanding genocide. In Star Trek Voyager, the female crew member having the dream states, "That which has happened before will happen again." We see her fears in our own society come to life as mass murder is committed over and over, yet there is no call for action. After all, they are them, and it does not affect us. Thank you. When I looked somewhere else, science fiction, a place that's supposed to be better than us or have more perfect being than us, what I found was that it was the same thing as humanity, except it was a little bit more specific in that the individual was completely ignored. And as quickly as if you ignore the individual, they're no longer a person. They're that group of people over there, or that nation over there. That someone else is not us.